So, human beings, above all else, rely on their vision. When I say that, I mean that more than any of the five senses, do we look to it for survival and for understanding about the world. What if each of us created relationships and made connections using taste or touch? What if we formed lasting and bonding relationships and connections with other people using smell or hearing? How different would the world look today? But instead, we rely on our vision. A friend and a designer, Amy Chen, once asked me, "Araba, what makes you unique?" She had her own project that she was working on. And instantly I told her, nobody sees the world like I do. That's not to say that I'm super special or anything, but to say that each of you sees the world in the way that you see it. That's the whole point. We're each unique in that way. Well, the way that I see the world is that it's a little bit broken. I'd say that so many of our problems are based off the fact that we are too interested in relying on self-interests, making decisions, creating policies around what benefits me and only me. Well, in my world, a lot of these things could work. It could function. I see a world with so much untapped potential. And sort of what Davis was saying, this comes back to the idea of empathy. In the world that I see, if people maybe took a chance to step into one another's shoes, instead of taking that 100 for yourself, you keep 50 and give 50 to somebody else. It's something I would do, not because I'm a saint, but because by giving somebody else 50, they might be able to contribute back to society in a way that you never could even have imagined. You might find that you enjoy exactly what it is that they've been able to bring to the table, but you would never have known that had you only kept your 100. And so all this is to say that if we rely on our vision the most in terms of how we understand the world, in terms of what we see influences so much of how we behave, how we react towards one another, why would I then not operate in the world of visuals if I'm so invested in changing how people behave, influencing how people think about one another? Well, as a photographer, I thought that that might be the best place to start. So I'll show you some of the projects that I'm currently working on. Send nudes. Intriguing title, no? As a young millennial, obviously, there's so many people who, we have smartphones these days, people send nudes to each other all the time, but this project is more about the body and our identities. This project looks at who we are and how this fits ourselves into a larger part of the society. Essentially, my thesis is getting at, this is my visual studies senior thesis, by the way. My thesis is getting at the fact that who I am is irrevocably tied to what I look like. I'll let you pause on that. That might seem a little strange, seeing as so many people want to tell you that you live in a post-racial, post-identity society. It's just not true. Have you seen the news? So many people are treated differently based off what they look like. But let me get into this a little bit further so it's not just obvious facts coming at you. I'll talk about the body and why my photographs are getting at these three parts. First, we have our physical body. What you see here before you, I have dark brown skin, very dark black hair. I'm 5'1", pretty short. I'm wearing heels, though. Switch it up. But that's my physical body. Almost like a second skin, a layer that I've come to be convinced cannot be removed from you is your socialized body. The fact that I'm wearing African print from West Africa, where my family's from. The fact that I've twisted my hair for the purposes of this talk and for life in general. But all of these things, the fact that my eyebrows are done, contribute to our socialized bodies. Our socialized bodies are what are in constant communication with the world around us. And that's important to note because when you walk up to somebody, the first thing that you see influences all the ideas and assumptions that we place on top of that. And lastly, it's your subjective body, who you are as subject. I'm Araba Ankuma. I have lived experiences. What I'm trying to say with all of three of these things is this triangulation soon turns into a cycle. If your lived experiences are based off of how your body communicates with the world around you, well, your communication with the world around you, your subjective or your socialized body, is built up 100% on what you look like, your physical form. So if all that is to be true, then who I am, my subject, as lived experiences, is 100% tied to what I look like. I get at this fact in my project by asking 4 simple questions. First, What part of your body do you value the most? Think about it. Well, Aiden talks about his blue eyes and how he looks amazing all the time. And when it comes to being aesthetically pleasing, as a white gay male, he has no problems getting into clubs or bars in Paris or in New York. He knows this, and he recognizes his privilege based off of the way that he looks, his facial features. My second question, what is the first thing that people say they notice about you, whether upon first meeting you or constantly? Well, my friend Kino talks about the fact that he has both bow-legged legs and supinated feet, and it causes him to walk with almost like a grouchy old man gait. And for him, he's noticed that a lot of people have told him this and have also followed up with, you seemed really grouchy and like mean when I first saw you. I never would have approached you, Kino recognizes the fact that his gait, the way that he walks, has influenced a lot of how people think about him, but that's not who he is. People would have never taken the time, perhaps, to know that he is in love with being just such a caring individual. He has so many happy thoughts. He wants to be a part of art and culture. He appreciates those things. He's hilarious. He has big arms with which he loves to give hugs, People wouldn't take the time to know that about him without having first gotten past their assumptions, their ideas of what he looked like. Which leads me to my third question. Of this thing that people say they notice about you constantly, has it ever influenced the opportunities that you've been afforded, do you think? Well, Kayla talks about her hair, how much she loves it. She loves doing it. She loves the process of, washing it, putting in her products, and making it back to how it should feel. But when she goes out into the world, she puts a big bun on her head. And a lot of people recognize the silhouette of Kayla's big bun on top of her head. She does this because she understands that should she leave her hair out naturally and walk around, people would judge her very differently. People might not take her nearly as seriously. And she acknowledges that fact. She takes an extra step to make sure that you all are more comfortable with what she looks like. That bun is for society to judge. And she notes that without it, a lot of the different things that she goes into, different meetings, different spaces, her interactions would be quite different without her tying up her hair in a more controlled manner. And lastly, do you believe that humans, as we were physically constructed, were done so equally? Created equally. Well, Jordan talks about the fact that this idea of equality in general, this concept of inequality, is an idea that we put on ourselves. Because in her mind, there should be no reason why in this day and age anyone should be limited, prohibited, or banned from doing anything or living a life that they want to live solely based off what they look like. She brings in ideas about the blind and how, for many of them, what if we allowed the blind to build a city on their own? How differently would that look? We as a society are so concerned with bringing in people with disabilities into the ways in which we think they want to be back into society. But let's give them the reins to do what they want. Let's let them take that 50 and contribute back to society. How differently would that look? This is just one of the projects I'm working on as part of my thesis. But I also had the opportunity of going to Cuba this past month with a photography class. And while I was there, I was actually shocked. I had been there before in 2015. I was shocked by how much the tourism industry had pervaded and sort of seeped into the everyday culture of Havana. I realized that I didn't have the energy or the want to put a camera in somebody's face because I realized that I had to acknowledge my own identity in this space. I am not a Cuban, I'm a tourist. So how can I, as a photographer, acknowledge that fact and still be a documentary photographer, still capture the line, the color, the texture, the culture of Havana, of Cuba, as a space that was once so magical to me? I felt like the kid who had gone to Disneyland and peeked behind the curtain and saw all the dusty cogs moving the second time around. It took me a week, and I struggled with it, but eventually I started to realize that perhaps I could place myself as subject in a number of different images. Maybe I could capture that line, texture, and color without me being in them necessarily, or without somebody else being in them, but by showing that perhaps I am touching this space. Let me show how expansive my reach as a tourist can go. And so 355 images later, these are just a few. I captured Havana in a very unconventional way. And I hope that this shows that I am not just trying to understand myself as I am singular in this space. I'm understanding how my body interacts with others, how my body is not a body unless it is interacting with others. And so I say this for everyone to take a moment, take a pause, and understand that we cannot solely just understand who we are, but who we are in the grand scheme of things. If we want to use our eyes to really understand the world, we can't go around blind. Thank you.